Ladies and gentlemen, a seismic shift is underway in the halls of global trade, and India stands at a compelling crossroads. Tonight, we take a closer look at a story that's reshaping the global trade map, one that has put India squarely at the center of a storm between Washington and Beijing. At the heart of it all, tariffs are steep, punishing, and politically charged. The United States, under its latest trade policy shift, has slapped India with a 25% reciprocal tariff, followed by another 25% tied directly to New Delhi's purchases of discounted Russian oil. The result, a crushing 50% levy on Indian exports to America, a market worth billions. For India, it wasn't just about lost revenue, it was about trust broken, partnerships strained, and the urgency of finding new economic lifelines. This sudden escalation didn't just sting, it sent shockwaves across New Delhi's political and financial corridors. Indian exporters saw their goods priced out of one of their most lucrative markets almost overnight. From textiles to pharmaceuticals, from machinery to software services, industries that had relied heavily on the U.S. suddenly found themselves caught in a crossfire not of their own making. Policymakers described it as unfair, unjustified, and unreasonable. And perhaps most importantly, it has sparked a reckoning about whether India can continue to rely on a U.S.-centric trade strategy in such volatile times. The tariffs also carried a sharp political undertone. Washington framed them as a response not only to trade imbalances, but also to India's independent stance on buying Russian crude, something the U.S. administration wanted to penalize. For India, the message was clear. Sovereignty came with a price tag. The choice was stark: either bend under pressure or chart a new, more self-reliant path. And so, New Delhi began to look eastward toward Beijing, its long-time rival and uneasy neighbor. The tariffs became more than just a trade dispute. They became a catalyst for India to rethink alliances and consider opening doors once thought firmly shut. In that sense, America's crackdown may have backfired, pushing India closer to China just when Washington had hoped to cement strategic ties. What we're witnessing isn't just an economic standoff. It's a turning point. A reminder that in today's interconnected world, one nation's tariffs can ripple across continents, redraw alliances, and force emerging powers like India to rewrite their playbook on the global stage. The relationship between India and China has often been defined by sharp contrasts. Two ancient civilizations, two modern powerhouses, but divided by borders that have flared into conflict and political mistrust. Yet, in the wake of Washington's tariff offensive against New Delhi, the calculus is beginning to shift. Both nations are quietly testing the waters of cooperation, not out of sentiment, but out of necessity. Diplomatic signals tell the story. In recent months, high-level meetings have resumed, with ministers on both sides describing talks as constructive and forward-looking. Direct commercial flights, suspended for years, are gradually being reinstated, reopening not just tourism but business travel that fuels trade partnerships. On the ground, limited border trade posts are being revived, offering small but symbolic proof that the two sides can find common ground when pushed by external pressures. Behind these moves lies a shared recognition, the unpredictability of U.S. trade and foreign policy is forcing regional powers to hedge their bets. For India, already bruised by tariffs and wary of overdependence on one market, the chance to diversify through Beijing's vast manufacturing base and financial clout is difficult to ignore. For China, battling slowing growth and seeking stable markets for its goods, a rapproche with India represents both opportunity and strategic insurance. Still, the thaw is cautious. Neither nation has forgotten the bloody clashes along the line of actual control, nor the years of suspicion that followed. Officials speak of cooperation in tightly measured terms, emphasizing economic pragmatism rather than sweeping gestures of friendship. But even limited steps, resuming flights, restarting trade, and maintaining dialogue, mark a departure from the hard freeze of recent years. For observers, the shift is striking. Where once confrontation dominated headlines, the narrative is now laced with words like recalibration, balance, and resilience. It reflects a broader truth about global politics in 2025. When one great power pulls away, others are quick to fill the vacuum. What happens next between India and China may not rewrite their rivalry, but it could redefine how both navigate an increasingly fractured world order. Indian policymakers are making it clear that any reopening to Chinese capital will be on their own terms. The talk in New Delhi is not about throwing open the doors, but about crafting a framework that protects national interests while leveraging economic opportunity. Proposals being considered include allowing Chinese companies to take only minority stakes in joint ventures, ensuring that Indian boards maintain leadership, and insisting on technology transfers that could strengthen domestic manufacturing capacity. This approach reflects a deliberate strategy: accept investment, but only if it builds resilience within India rather than creating dependence. Electronics manufacturing has emerged as one of the focal points. With global demand rising and India aiming to become a hub for smartphones, semiconductors, and consumer electronics, Chinese capital and expertise could help accelerate growth. But strict guidelines would mean factories must be set up on Indian soil, jobs must be created locally, and advanced know-how must flow to Indian partners. Similar ideas are being explored in sectors such as renewable energy and pharmaceuticals, where collaboration could expand production without ceding control. This careful calibration reflects lessons learned from the past. India has watched smaller economies become vulnerable when too dependent on Chinese investment. By setting boundaries now, minority equity, joint ventures, and mandatory knowledge sharing, New Delhi seeks to capture the upside of cooperation without repeating those mistakes. It is not about welcoming China with open arms, but about ensuring that every deal advances India's long-term vision of self-reliance and strategic independence. New Delhi's message is unmistakable: Chinese investment will be welcome only if it serves India's interests first. The government is working on a model that keeps the reins firmly in Indian hands: minority stakes for Chinese firms, Indian-led management structures, and binding commitments to transfer technology. This is not an open invitation, but a tightly guarded gateway. By insisting on these conditions, India hopes to harness foreign capital while simultaneously building its own domestic strength. Electronics is one of the clearest examples. India wants to position itself as a global hub for smartphones, semiconductors, and consumer goods. Chinese companies already have expertise, scale, and supply chains that could accelerate that ambition. But under the proposed rules, they would need to set up manufacturing on Indian soil, employ local workers, and share critical know-how. The goal is to use Chinese participation as a stepping stone toward India's larger dream of becoming self-reliant in high-tech production. The approach also stretches into other sectors. In renewable energy, partnerships could fast-track solar and battery projects. In pharmaceuticals, joint ventures could help scale up low-cost production. Yet, at every stage, the guiding principle remains the same: no unchecked control, no loopholes that compromise sovereignty. Indian leaders have watched how overexposure to Chinese investment left smaller nations indebted or strategically compromised, and they are determined not to repeat that pattern. What emerges is a vision of selective openness. Deals are possible, but only under terms that align with India's long-term security and economic resilience. It is pragmatism with guardrails, a way of turning geopolitical turbulence into an opportunity for growth while keeping strategic autonomy intact.